Hi, I'm Joe Lynch, and you're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi, and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm Jon Liebman, founder and first baseman. You know, a lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play an instrument. So I created ForBassPlayersOnly.com for people mostly over 50, adults who want to learn to play an instrument, because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. ForBassPlayersOnly.com, this is the place to learn bass. My guest this week is Joe Lynch. Joe is a lawyer in the New York area, and he's also a longtime fan of rock and roll. And Joe wanted to do something with his passion. So he took up the bass, and now he's doing all kinds of stuff in the New York, New Jersey area, along all the beaches. He loves playing for audiences, and he especially loves to see the people's reactions when they start swaying their shoulders and moving, just as music lovers do. How are you, Joe?
I'm good, John. How you doing?
Doing great, thank you. Welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I wanted to share your story with my audience because it's very inspiring. Let me just start by asking you, what exactly was it inside you that said, yeah, I'm a lawyer, but I want to play music? I mean, what were you feeling? What inspired you or made you want to take the plunge, as we say?
Sure. I mean, I always had an interest in music. I tooled with the guitar when I was a teenager. Never really, I jammed with a few people, played a lot, but mostly I played myself, sort of in the room, played along with records, did that. Never really catapulted into the next level on it. But, you know, was always interested in it, loved music, loved listening to music, talking about music, reading it, going to shows, things like that. And then, you know, I had the pleasure of having 3 kids. And my son was very, very gifted as a musician from an early age. Started singing, took lessons, and in the New York City area, excelled in many of the public schools, very competitive schools, in singing. So, and then took piano at a very young age too, and piano lessons. So I started looking at his books a little bit, you know, and looked at him, looked at the notes, and listened to him practice. And you know, it was very good. It was a great diversion from the TV, you know, and everything else in your life, and just hearing somebody get better and better with it, you know, over time. And then, you know, life circumstances sometimes change, and I had two daughters, and my wife and I split. And I was in an apartment, and I was trying to figure out the best way to bond with the kids and not be on their phones all the time or in front of a TV. So I bought 4 ukuleles from, like, you know, the cheapest ukuleles, and I put them in the room. My son was maybe about 12 at this, maybe about, no, he was about 14, and the girls were about 10 and 12, you know, at that time. And we just started playing them. And, you know, we started playing them together, kidding around a little bit. That sort of evolved to buying a guitar for one of my daughters. And then all of a sudden I'm like, you know, I was always interested in the bass, and I wanted to fill out the band a little bit. My son had the piano. My youngest one really wasn't playing at that time. So I literally went down on a Saturday morning to the music store down the block and bought a bass and an amp. And I just brought it into the house and just started going online and just started playing. And they came over, they loved it. The music instruments expanded in the house and such. And we just started playing, and we had a great time doing it. And, you know, you learn with that, and you go along with it, and was playing. And I did have sort of a background. I sort of understood the keys, the majors, the chord progressions, because I played already guitar. I was more of a rhythm guitar player. So I understood where it was, learned the positions on the bass and such like that, looked at a few books, figured out the beat, the rhythm. And, you know, I must say that I really took pride in the way I could find the beat. You know, I mean, I guess sometimes, you know, not to sound, over proud of it, but some people just have it, right? You know, you just have that, natural feel of it. And then I bought my younger daughter a bass too. So I had a piano, a guitar, and two basses, which is an interesting combo, right? You don't see that often, a dual bass in a band. But anyway, we were playing along, and I ran into a friend of mine on the street, and he was a guy I went to lower school with, and I was with my middle daughter, and he said, "Hey, we're having a reunion. I don't know if you heard about it, but some of our friends are playing in a band, and it came up where I play. I can't remember actually how it came, but maybe we talked about it once before." He said it would be a lot of fun to surprise people and do a couple of songs. And I was like, sure. My daughter's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, fine. So went to this place, sweating it out during their first set. They take a break, sweating it out more. And
what were you playing? Do you remember? You remember?
Yeah. Have you ever seen The Rain and Cinnamon Girl? So, I had it, practiced it, ad nauseum, and had a great time. It was the first time I ever played in front of people, and played in front, and it was a blast. And then started, trying to get more serious in it. I met you, and that was right around the time I believe the pandemic started. I bought a couple of books from you, if you remember. I bought two of the same books, so me and my younger daughter could learn the ones at the same time. You wrote me a note saying, "I think you made a mistake. You bought two of the same books." And I said, "No, I didn't. One was for my daughter, but thank you for that heads up, and we just started talking, and, we started doing live Zooms during the pandemic. And, you taught me a lot on rhythm, and I guess by being a lawyer and I have somewhat of a math mind that, music theory to me, especially on the bass, was very mathematical. It was very strong in that rhythm, very, I don't know how to describe it, but very, very mathematical, I guess is the best way to say it. And sort of took that talent, and figured it out. Obviously you have to know math, you have a whole note, you have a half note, you have a quarter note, that's four. You have an eighth, that's simple, 1 + 2 = 3. And, but just know if your mind is that way, maybe you think a little bit better on it. Always just try to, yeah.
It's the third, minor third octave. Yeah.
And it just sort of clicked that way. So, just understanding it, and, you were a great teacher, got me the foundations on it. I started playing more with the guys, playing more and more. And I realized this is a real fun part of it because, I think when I was younger and playing guitar, it's so much fun in a room. It's so much fun to do it. But the human reaction of music is incredible. It's just, and you never know how it's going to start. You never know how it's going to end. You never know what mood everybody's going to be in. You get a rainy day on the beach and people are just happy. It's a great communication between people. And when you play good with a number of people in a band together and it just clicks, you have no sense of, other than the good sense of timing, you have no sense of really anything else but just in that moment. And it's great. And it's sort of to me, anybody can run long distance, right? I'm going to go out and run 5 miles, but my personality goes, if I'm training for a race, I end up running those 5 miles better. So my practicing is better if I'm playing and going toward a show or going toward a certain type of music. So that's my direction. So yeah.
It's interesting. A few things. Well, first of all, I want to back up. I'm curious, when you got together with the kids on the ukes,
yeah.
Were you playing your music or their music?
What were we playing? We were playing simple songbooks. We would just pick out songbooks, or we'd go on YouTube, or we figure something out, whether it's a Beatles song, whether it's a simple folk song. My middle daughter, who's at Bard College now, is playing a lot of music. She's in a folk band. And, I could still remember. Then she took up violin. She had violin lessons. So her string and her picking is just natural now, the way she plays. So it was a lot of that sort of country type music that we just like to play. So, yeah.
I just remember when I was a kid, songbooks used to be like, "Go Tell Aunt Rhody." And
yeah. There's a lot of that, the circle, circles, bro. Yeah.
Something else you said that was interesting. You said when you were younger and you were playing guitar, you were in a room by yourself, and now when you're playing in a band with other people in front of a live audience and you see the reactions, It's interesting. It surprised me a little bit at first, but some people have told me that they actually have little or no interest in playing in a live band in public. They're perfectly content to sit in a room and just woodshed and learn
Yeah.
the bass and learn the groove and practice along with it. So I just thought that was interesting. You still get some pleasure out of that too, don't you?
Well, you have to have it, right? I think you have to practice, so it's all part of it to get there. I do. I enjoy it. It's like, I'll sit there, I'll lose track of time. There's no doubt. But isn't that the great thing about music is that, it's all individual. Some people get the biggest thrill about just, sitting in the room, nothing wrong with it. I just love the audience. I just love that kind of connection with it. So that's, like I said, that's the greatest thing about it. It's different courses.
So you had learned a lot coming up, mostly on guitar, and you figured out a lot of stuff and you studied some stuff. So you had some very basic knowledge of the fundamentals. When you came to me, what were you looking for when you came to ForBassPlayersOnly.com? What was it that was missing, or what did you want to study or learn?
I wanted to study theory. That's the way my mind works sometimes. Being a lawyer, you understand that you have to know the law, right? You have to know the way behind it. I think, some people just have a natural, innate ability of just being natural players, right? They could just pick it up and, you look at them and say, how did they learn that? And they just shrug their shoulders. My mind works differently. My mind works in the way of, I wanted to understand the different beats on it, on the metronome, reading the music, understanding the progressions, understanding the keys, the key signatures, the breaks, the whole thing like that. Because, the bass is, we've talked about this, John, the bass is what holds it together, right? We can't be all over the place. I almost take almost like one of my cardinal rules is, and we've talked about this before, especially if I'm playing with a new band, which I did last week, which, I like to tell you about too, which was interesting. I hardly ever play above the 5th to 7th fret. I won't.
You're a very smart bass player.
I just like to keep it down there because, the rest of the band is, especially the guitar players, it just doesn't sound muddled. You keep the groove, you keep the beat with the drummer, you stay there. I think you got to create like that foundation. So I just wanted to learn how to be a solid bass player. I just wanted to learn how to keep the beat, be there, and just be strong. Yeah.
Now, when you joined the Bottom Line Club membership for Bass Players Only, how did you first approach it? Did you binge through all the lessons, or did you pick certain ones, or was it a combination? How did you get through the lessons?
I did a lot of quick looking at all of them and figured out one that I was either in the mood for or one that I was interested in, whether it was like a country thing or the hard rock ones or the blues or something like that. And really depend on what mood I was in or what music I was listening to at the time, or if I was playing with a bunch of people, what kind of stuff they were listening, we were playing. Like there was one band that I played with for a long time. A long time is a couple of years, but the band I was playing with, I guess that is a long time for bar bands, things like that. It was a very driving beat. The band I subbed in with last week, I subbed with them a couple of times. They're more of a country beat. Even though they don't play country music, but it's more, they do play some Cash, they play some different things, they play some like Grateful Dead, they play things like that, but it's a very bop country beat. So I'd learn that style. It's all about style, right? Or blues or something like that. And I think that I have some go-to ones. I'm a good driving bass player. I'm a good blues bass player, I believe. I have a good feel for that because it was my favorite music when I was growing up. Whether it was, Clapton or the Allman Brothers or something like that, or Derek and the Dominoes and, things like that, so I sort of had that kind of style with it. I started tooling around a little bit on the jazz stuff, which is interesting, right? And you can mix it up a little bit, and then, you catch your bandmates' eyes or you catch the audience eyes. They notice, what was that? Like that. They don't really know what it was, but it was something.
I love when that happens with the drummer. The bass player and the drummer, you just kind of give that nodding approval.
Yeah. It's fun, when you surprise your bandmates in a good way, right?
You
Not
know,
in a
it's
bad
funny,
way.
the way you described for bass players only, the Bottom Line Club, you make it sound kind of like like a Netflix for bass players.
The diversity is great. I mean, listen, that's music, and depends what mood you're in. It's nice to have the choices. To look at.
So, how quickly did you start to see an appreciable improvement in your bass playing once you joined?
I used to play a lot of golf, right? And when I played a lot of golf, I would be really good or I'd be really bad. It was like really, it was so fickle to it. I think the best way that I got better at bass is my ear got better. And I think it was just playing over time. Like, for example, sometimes when I play with some people, I'm like, okay, you're doing that in A. Okay, fine. It's, and then, it's just a 1-4-5 or a 2-5, we have one or something like that. And, on the numbering and just understanding that and realizing where the minor goes in that certain key, and things like that. And, you probably can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's nothing wrong with a minor pentatonic to throw in once in a while during a break, right? So it's like learning that, but playing within your box. I sort of like, that
Because
makes
that's not the
I,
only.
I think I got better that way, just by all of a sudden not having to think about it. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, it come naturally in that way.
It sounds like boning up on your music theory helped your bass
Oh
playing.
yeah, definitely. I mean, music theory is funny. To me, it's like some people love it, some people hate it, but in some ways, I really think it's necessary. I just think maybe not as much, not to the point. Listen, I'm a recreational player. You know what I mean? I'm not going to, to go to Berkeley. I'm not going to be playing, at Carnegie Hall. I'm not going to be doing that. But I want to learn enough to realize like where my fingers and where my notes should be at certain parts of certain songs. Not to play, I mean, and again, play within your style, play within, your sweet spot in that way. But it's nice to have that theory behind you and not to think, oh, I got to go here. You know what I mean? And I got to go here, and just innately, do they call it music memory? They call it mind. I don't know what they call it. They can call it anything they want, but sort of like, your subconscious takes over, right?
It's funny. I was in a class one time, and Al Di Meola came in as a guest speaker, and he was such an incredible influence on me when I was in high school. People talk about bass players. The first time they heard Jocko, it changed their life. Well, for me, it was even more profound as a guitar player, which I was in high school, and
Right.
I was crazy about Al. So several years later, he came in, and somebody asked him a question about music theory, and he says, if you're playing a solo or you're playing a song and you're thinking about theory, you haven't got it.
Yeah.
Which made perfect sense. What else can you do now that you couldn't do before you joined the Bottom Line Club? You rattled off quite a few things. Is there anything else that you left out?
Well, I really enjoyed having a regular spot in a band. Okay, I enjoyed it. But life gets in the way sometimes. And John, more than anybody, is that, to be in a band and play every week, say, for example, the only way I describe it, it's like decorating your house for the holidays, hanging up all the lights, having a dinner and have to take them down after. It's every night, and it's tiring. I mean, especially listen, I'm a little older, I mean, I'm not 25, I can't jump in the car at 4 a.m, get up at 9 and feel that way. But, playing, all the time and doing that, was a lot of fun, but it was almost a point where it became a job and I didn't want that. I wanted to get enjoyment out of it. I have a steady, I have a good career. So I wanted to, do this more, and it's sort of stopped being a little more fun, to be honest. So I started telling the guys I couldn't come as much and started like that. So there's this other band that plays around in my neighborhoods and plays around New York. They play in New York City. They play Manhattan. They play down at the Rockaways, down at the beaches. They play all over. And I was always friendly with them. They saw me play one night and they said, would you ever want to play? And I said, well, always keep me in mind. And they called me out of the blue. Get to the point here. They called me out of the blue and said, hey, we need a player on Friday. And this was like Monday. And I turned to my girlfriend now she's my wife. And I said, Amy, I don't know if I can do this. This is insane. I said, well, send me the set list. And I knew 40% of the songs. Didn't know the other ones. But I learned them. I learned them in a span of a few days. And I think what happened was I learned the feeling behind them as much as I knew every individual note on it. It would have taken me so much time to know it. So I sort of knew at that point, I sort of got to a certain stage of being happy with where I was as a bass player, because I could do that. I could sit in and I could able to do that. And that was the style I wanted to do, so that's fulfilling. I like the idea I can come in and I can just acclimate or just adopt to a band. And I think all the training like sort of came up to that point, where I could just come in and say, okay, what are we doing this in? Where is it? Are you, where, okay, there's a modulation at the end, at the last chorus. Okay, I got it. Go. And just did it. And we had some fun times. The name of the band is Hella High Water. They're a band that plays in New York. If, check them out one time. They're a lot of fun. We just played this Sunday, and it was a typical beach day that was washed away with the rain. Played in front of a full house. We had a great time, and I hardly played with them. People loved it. And they were all dancing around, having fun. That's the thing, right?
No, I can't tell you how great that is to hear when you were talking a minute ago, and just you're exuding confidence just in describing the situation. Yeah, I walk in. Okay, what are you doing? What are we doing? Okay, hey, let's go. And it wasn't, no timidity.
Yeah, no, it wasn't being timid, but you got to know your comfort zone too, right? I mean, I didn't do like a Daryl Jones bass solo during "Miss You." I was just like, I'm not doing that. You know what I mean, or something like that. But it's playing in your own house. Your own speed in that way.
So, what can you say to other people in your situation? They may be working, they may be retired. Almost everybody that I've ever spoken to who's retired has told me that they're actually busier in retirement than they were working. But I'm not saying that they don't like what they do. Maybe they have a career, or like I said, maybe they're retired, but they have this passion like you do to play bass. A lot of blues fans out there, a lot of classic rock fans. Some people want to play some walking bass lines or some funk R&B.
Yeah.
But, mostly people that I'm attracting are, north of 50.
Yep.
They're at that age. So what can you say to those people that would either advise them or inspire them? What can they learn from your experience? Because you've had such a good one.
Yeah, I'll say it very basically, and it might sound very simple, but have fun. Have fun doing it. Remember, you're choosing to do this to have fun. And if you get a little, frustrated by it, if your fingers aren't moving the right way, if you're just having a bad day, just put it down and maybe put some music on, or watch some bass player play or something. It's not easy, but just have fun with it and realize you're doing this to have fun. You're not doing it to add another level of responsibility or obligation or frustration in your life. You're doing this for another reason. You're doing this to expand, sort of something. I think a lot of us, took up an instrument at a young age, and life, got complicated. And, whether it was because when I saw my kids having fun with it, made me, be in that little school, that little rock and roll school we did in my apartment, back then, but that's the fun part about it. And everybody's different, and you can't model yourself on somebody else's success and say, well, this person's amazing and they did this at X, Y, and Z. I mean, I am not the best bass player out there. I'm far from it, but I know what I'm good at. And I'm good at, playing well with others, getting the reaction from the crowd, enjoying that. And it means going to school, meaning doing some of the theory, learning the songs, because you got to sound good to have the fun with it. But don't beat yourself up over it. Just don't. I mean, life's too short. You're doing this for yourself. Treat yourself to a good lesson and reward yourself when you play well, because you're working hard at it, and just have fun, because that's why you're doing it.
Great
You know?
advice. I interviewed an 11-year-old girl a couple of weeks ago. She said the same thing. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we do so much in our lives because we have to do it, right? We do so much in our lives because we're obligated to do it. We sit in traffic 2 hours a day sometime. You know, pick up your bass, put on some music, get some sheet music in front of you. Just try to mimic it. You
All
know,
right.
just try to learn.
That's great advice for somebody who's already taken the steps toward learning and they've made a commitment or at least a quasi commitment. What about people who are, yeah, I'd like to do that. Yeah, I should do that. Yeah, one day I'm going to do that. What can you say to them so they'll get started?
Go down the block like I did, buy a bass and a small amp. You know, I mean, you know, you run a marathon, you got to start with a mile, right?
That's right. Just
Yeah.
the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly,
But
exactly.
I mean, to get them off the fence, well, just that's internal. Just do it.
Just do it. I mean, you know, and don't, you know, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Get a secondhand bass. You know, get an amplifier in a garage sale. You know, get something like that. Makes a little noise, right? You know, when you get better, if you like it more, you can get, you know, bigger stuff. Sometimes the best music is played on the most simplest things. You know,
That's true. Yeah. Well, you've come a long way, Joe.
Thank you.
You're still learning, as we all are.
You always do, right?
Well, what about the future? What else would you like to do musically, specifically on the bass? What else would you like to learn?
I think I want to go, now that I've been doing some of the band things, I have a couple of ideas and a couple of concepts, which I'll let you know about. It's sort of a tease in a way, but I have a couple of ideas that I've been talking to with a couple of people here in New York City. And it's almost like a musical kind of theme kind of show that I want to do. And I think it does some really interesting sort of things that are more in some of my, as you probably remember, is like, you know, I love the blues. I love the hard driving. I'm more of a fan, you know, more of like the 70s or late 60s and 70s rock. And there's a lot of stuff that people love. I mean, like teenagers love that stuff, you know, and it's 50 years old. Yeah. You know, if you look at it, when that music was made 50 years ago, it was the 20s. And the 20s music was a lot different than the 70s music. But if you look at the music, I mean, music's different now, but the kids now, you know, you don't see kids in the 70s dancing to Joplin, did you? You know, from 20s music, ragtime, not as much. But now you see kids.
You meant Janice.
Right, exactly. That's right. There was one before, right? Scott Joplin. So what I'm saying is like music has sort of changed so much where the styles have not completely changed. I'm sure, John, you know what I'm saying, is that, you know, people love this music. And, you know, so there's a lot of commonality when it comes down to this style. So I have a lot of ideas in that way, which means doing things a little bit more alone, but bringing players in. So we'll see, you know.
Fascinating. I'm so glad I asked. That sounds great. You reminded me I worked in higher education for 26 years. And one of the first things somebody told me when I got into that space, he says, ladies and gentlemen, I think it was a class I was attending on the school business. And he says, every year we get a year older, but the students stay the same age.
Exactly.
Very interesting when you see a teacher or somebody who's been in school 20, 30, 40 years, like Mr. Holland's Opus. You've seen that movie?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
well, here's a tip for an old bass player. I think old bass players look cooler than older lead singers. Okay. I mean, an old bass player, you know, I mean, you play a great bass beat, it's a great style. You know, you can, you know, nobody says, well, look at that guy playing bass. He's good, but he's old. You know, if somebody's like playing Steve, you know, what's his name from Journey, and he's 70, doesn't really look as good, you know, but, you know, either one of those old established bass players, it's a good persona, you know.
Well, that's a good note to end on, Joe. Thank you again. You are so inspiring to me, and I'm sure to our audience here. Keep doing what you're doing, and I'm especially excited about your future plans, and I can't wait to hear more about them, and maybe we'll do a follow-up interview.
Love it, John. Thank you. And the bottom line is have fun doing it. Yep.
There you go. Yes, and you do keep having fun.
Thanks, John. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. You're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm Jon Liebman, founder and first baseman. A lot of people think they're too old to learn how to play an instrument, so I created ForBassPlayersOnly.com for adults who want to learn to play an instrument, because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. ForBassPlayersOnly.com, this is the place to learn music. Thanks again to my special guest this week, Joe Lynch. I will see you all next week right here, same time, same place. In the meantime, let's play bass.